heart of where innovation, money, and power collide in Silicon Valley and beyond. This is Bloomberg Technology with Caroline Hyde and Ed Ludlow.
I'm Caroline Hyde at Bloomberg's world headquarters in New York.
And I'm Ed Ludlow in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg Technology.
Coming up, Apple. It rebounds in China as iPhone shipments spike in April. We bring you the details and the discounts driving the moves.
Plus, we'll have full crypto coverage ahead as Bitcoin and Ether retreat.
And we discuss all things AI as Musk's XAI raises $6 billion and OpenAI adds an oversight board. All that and so much more coming up ahead. But first, let's go to these public markets. And there's a lot of macro data to be digesting this week. A shortened trading week thanks to the holidays. It was in the US and the UK. Look, we're up 0.5% on the NASDAQ as we do see sentiment recovering. You see home sales recovering too. With this strong economic data, what then does the Fed do? It seems as though for now, we're still pushing long technology, even in the face of some hawkish sentiment coming around the Federal Reserve. Two-year yield, just down a little bit. Look, we've got some key auctions coming, 2-year, 5-year this week. How will that see demand respond to that supply? For now, we're seeing actually just yields tick a little bit lower, but still at elevated levels. New York crude up 2.2%. This is more of geopolitical risk. Once again, concerns happening in the Middle East. Keep an eye on commodities. What also is happening in the world of risk assets? Let's look at Bitcoin for a moment. Look, we're down, under pressure, more than 2%, coming off of our lows, Ed. It's notable that there's $67,000. Trying to factor in what happens to that $9 billion of Bitcoin, the value of Bitcoin held by Mt. Gox creditors. Will we start to see some of the movement within those wallets? Will we see creditors regain the Bitcoin? Will we see finally them able to sell? That's the key question. But what have you got on the micro?
There's going to be a really big focus on semiconductors throughout the show and on AI. We're going to go to our team around the country to talk a little bit about that. But NVIDIA is the biggest points boost on both the NASDAQ 100 and S&P 500. The story that we're going to focus on is Elon Musk's XAI closing that mega funding round. But the next step of the conversation is, well, they'll probably use the NVIDIA H100 as a cluster to train their large language models. There are other names doing well by association. AMD is coming to market more and more with its MI300X. Dell, by association with NVIDIA, looking strong, also one of the biggest gainers in that context, and Intel feeling the love a little bit as well. And then there's Apple. So we're zeroed in on this data from the China Academy of Information and Communications Technology. Bloomberg crunches the numbers, and it looks like last month, in other words, April, iPhone shipments in China jumped 52% year on year. Things are improving, but the backstory is that for most of 2024, Apple and some of the resellers have done a lot of discounting in China to get that smartphone market going.
Yeah, certainly. And we've got to factor in, therefore, what this really points to in terms of Chinese consumer demand. Anurag Rana is here with us from Bloomberg Intelligence. And we try to piece together the picture of a very important consumer base to Apple. And ultimately, discounts are working.
Yeah, you know, one of the things is we have had nothing but bad news coming out of China for a fair amount, I would say now. But when you look at it, it seems that the China situation for Apple is more cyclical in nature and not structurally people just giving away the phone. So I think it's a good news for China, for Apple, but at the same time, we are also not harping a lot of these numbers into our calculations of sales data, because one of the things we saw in the last quarter, even though Jan-Feb sales were really bad, but Apple came out and said that their mainland China revenue grew. So I'm not extrapolating this information down to revenue, but from a sentiment point of view, I think this is good news for Apple.
Anurag, one of the drivers of sentiment among the Chinese consumer has been discounts and incentives. We're entering June, which is kind of another modern-day period of sales events in China. How sustainable is it to rely on that?
So I think it's something new that Apple has to grapple with. Before, this was a brand that did not go out and give sales in China, but we have seen that I think 2 times in a row now that that's one way to drive the channel to make sure they don't have a built-up inventory. Now, I think it's going to be important in June, because if they do decide or they do announce decent enough features of AI in their phone, that could potentially lead to a better refresh cycle this winter, then they need to get those older phones out, as soon as possible. Otherwise, you're stuck with all those phones, and and there's no sales at that point. So I think it's important for them to continue this momentum at this point.
And will WWDC be the momentum driver going into June?
I think so. I think we have heard a lot of good news, but at the same time, the stock's already done so well, even ahead of those news. Now, I think by default, Apple itself may not have those amazing features, but if it's able to announce, as Mark has alluded to, a partnership with OpenAI, I think that will tell people that Apple, even if they don't have their own technology, they are okay to license that from the best vendors out there. And with over 1 billion phones out there with people's hand, I think they can give a boost to any AI vendor who's going to give their technology to them.
Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Analyst Anurag Rana on all things Apple. Thank you so much. Meanwhile, and sticking with China, the country has set up its largest ever semiconductor investment fund to propel development of the domestic chip industry. The fund, worth $47.5 billion, is the latest effort from Beijing to achieve self-sufficiency as the US seeks to restrict its growth. Meanwhile, SenseTime Group co-founder Zhu Bing says China's domestic AI chip makers are making fast progress in closing the gap on international leaders. Listen to this.
There are shortage of resource here in Asia in general. For instance, the shortage of compute. I think in general, it's like a 10 times of gap of the compute resources that we have here compared to the US leaders. But I think Asian markets never lack of talents and never lack of data. So in terms of talents and data, I think eventually we will also be able to, even though that we have lack of compute, we're able to, make sure that we squeeze the last bit of the compute.
Fascinating global take on the necessities of compute. Let's just talk chips a little bit more, but from the Texas Instruments perspective. We have an activist investor on our hands. $2.5 billion worth of Texas Instruments is how much Elliott Investment Management has just taken in the company. What do they want? An improvement and free cash flow. We're up 0.3%. This is Bloomberg Technology.
It's the AI hardware names, the kind of semiconductor names in the AI space, and some others in chips that are leading the charge this Tuesday morning. Nvidia's up 5%, continuing to push fresh record highs. The story we'll get to later in the program is xAI, Elon Musk's AI company, raising significant money, the assumption being they will train current future gen models on the H100 series. And by association, you see names AMD and Dell that's so closely aligned with NVIDIA at the moment higher. Texas Instruments, Kara was just talking about, more muted now, 0.3% higher, but it had been much higher as Elliott takes a significant stake and is concerned about free cash flows. There is an excellent conversation to be had with Mizuho's America's desk-based analyst, Jordan Klein. You have your ear to the ground, so to speak, more than anyone that I know. Let's start with NVIDIA, right? The AI story is well told. It's well traded now. How much do you think the activity in NVIDIA this session is that, xAI is going to buy a whole load of H100s, or is it kind of treading water to the stock split that's coming in June?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ed. I think it's probably 70–80% the Musk xAI story versus the stock split. I mean, I definitely think that stock split's going to continue to pull in retail investors. I don't think institutional money managers care so much. They're pretty much all long and overweight this stock, but I think retail investors seeing a 10-for-1 stock split, and it's coming up soon, so that'll get people more active in the near term. But anytime you see a headline, $6 billion in financing, you got to assume the lion's share of that is not hiring people, it's actually buying compute infrastructure, which is going to be pretty good for NVIDIA.
Are they therefore, these long and overweight institutional investors, right to be so focused on NVIDIA? At what point do we see further diversification going on here, Jordan?
Well, that's a great question, and I think you're really starting to see it accelerate beyond just NVIDIA. I mean, if you pulled up a chart of Qualcomm, you probably wouldn't know that Qualcomm's up the same amount as NVIDIA over the last, in May. They're both up about 28%. It's pretty unbelievable, but no one really talks about Qualcomm because it's not a direct AI story. The other thing is memory stocks have been just, on a blistering pace higher this year, particularly Micron, semi-cap equipment, Taiwan Semi, who makes all these chips. And the other group that I think is really catching attention is these cyclical analog semis like Texas Instruments, Analog Devices, Microchip that have started to call a bottom in industrial demand with, expectations that demand will start to improve later on this year.
I want to linger on Qualcomm just a moment longer. I get what you're saying. We actually do talk about Qualcomm quite a lot on this program, Jordan, to be fair. But the story is about AI shifting from the modern-day version of the computer, which is the server rack, back onto device, smartphone and PC. The concern that I hear all the time is Qualcomm might be the main beneficiary in the first instance. What happens if the consumer doesn't buy any of these devices?
Well, that's a great question. I think that is the risk, that unless you give consumers a reason to go out and replace or upgrade their smartphone or their PC or notebook, they're probably just going to sit there and use what they already have. These phones are so good today. I think that's why you need to see Apple and other, like Google, who controls Android, create real new functionality and features related to AI that offer efficiency, productivity, real new things that you can do with your phone that you can't do with an existing phone to drive you to upgrade. If they don't do that, then I think it's just going to be all a marketing ploy, and consumers are going to basically say, there's no reason for me to spend another $1,100, $1,200 to get a phone that's going to basically operate the same way. So the onus is on the ecosystem, the software, but I think it's going to evolve and develop faster than people think. So I think in a year from now, a lot of people are going to be motivated to actually upgrade. The other thing is if you hold your phone for longer, you're probably more willing to future-proof a new purchase and say, I'd rather just have the product that can handle AI, even if it's a year or two out, than buying something right now that can't.
And I think all onus, therefore, is on WWDC that comes in June, is on understanding how we use AI PCs. Microsoft trying to articulate that recently, Jordan. Going back, though, to your focus on analog, and you've been saying, look, this is being brought up more and more by investors. The news case today that an activist investor is getting into Texas Instruments, well, they want cash flow, they want rewards to shareholders. But what are you hearing that shareholders want from analog right now?
Well, analog is probably one of the most forward-looking groups of semis. They have a lot of exposure to auto, industrial, communications, consumer. So they're very macro sensitive. And, people tend to buy analog when they think estimates have bottomed. And in 6 months, those numbers are going to start to go up. Pretty much what you heard in April and May from all these analog companies is that industrial, which is one of the biggest end markets for analog, has bottomed. June, July will be the bottom quarter, and that order rates and a book-to-bill will start to improve thereafter. Now, we don't really know how fast, but they're saying the PMIs are starting to show improvement globally, and that should lead to, probably upward revisions by maybe late this year, but definitely into next year. So that's why people buy these. They don't have AI, but that's actually good. They kind of diversify investors beyond just AI into more macro cyclical end markets.
Your sell-side desk made some upgrades in the analog space last week. Having had a long holiday weekend to think about it, what was investor reaction to that?
Well, I'll be honest, I didn't get any pushback. Sometimes on these upgrades, people are like, you guys are way too late. This is going to be a poor call because the valuations don't support the fundamentals. I didn't get any of that. I get a lot of people asking, is now the right time to buy these? They are up a fair amount this year. Not as much as NVIDIA and the AI trade, but they're up 15, 20%. And the valuations are quite high on next year's numbers. So they already discount, or let's say, assume a pretty good recovery from, let's say, the end of this year into next year. So that's where the pushback is that, isn't this all in the stocks already? Isn't it too late to be buying, TI and ADI and Microchip at these levels? And we don't really have a lot of visibility into the shape of the analog recovery. Is it going to be a V-shaped recovery? Or is it going to be like a U or L-shaped recovery that takes a long time? So still a lot of questions, but my sense is that if you keep seeing these stocks act well, even if the news flow is mixed, they're going to keep going up.
Jordan Klein and Mizuho, always plugged in. Thank you. Coming up on the program, we're going to be joined by August co-CEO and co-founder Aya Kantorovich for her thoughts on potential Ether ETFs. Karen.
Meanwhile, let's check in some deal making going on in the wireless space. T-Mobile, big player here in the US, second largest mobile carrier. It's buying assets from US Cellular Corp's wireless operations. It's basically getting spectrum, it's getting retail customers, it's getting retail stores. It's seeing a little uplift for T-Mobile and certainly the parent company of US Cellular Corp. This is Bloomberg Technology.
Okay, it's time for Talking Tech, and in the news, Asia's e-commerce leader, Sea, is under increased scrutiny by Indonesia's antitrust authorities for unfairly favouring its own delivery service. In a hearing, Sea and its e-commerce arm, Shopee, is alleged to have set up an algorithm that prioritised its own services over competitors. A follow-up hearing has been scheduled for June 11th, in which Shopee's legal team will respond. Plus, Hyundai Motors has tapped more banks, including Morgan Stanley, as advisors for a potential IPO of its India unit. This could be one of the biggest listings in India ever. The banks joined Citi, HSBC and JP Morgan, which could all raise about $2.5 billion, as previously reported by Bloomberg. And healthcare payment software maker Waystar is looking to raise as much as $1.04 billion in an IPO that would make it one of the biggest this year. According to a filing, Waystar's offering 45 million shares for $20 to $23 a piece. The company filed for a NASDAQ listing in October, but has been monitoring market conditions as it weighs timing of a launch. Waystar plans to trade on the NASDAQ Global Select Market under the ticker WAY. Karen.
Now, let's turn our attention to other types of assets that people are trading, and these ones being digital, the world of crypto, and we've got so much to digest. We're still awaiting potentially a further decision from the SEC on Ether ETFs. Those are for issuers. Meanwhile, Bitcoin on the downside, as you can currently see. That's after administrators really been trying to step up efforts to return $9 billion worth of Bitcoin from the failed Mt. Gox. That was once the world's biggest Bitcoin exchange. We've got to break it all down. Aya Kantorovich is with us, co-CEO, co-founder of August. You've got a platform basically designed for the management and settlement of digital assets. And I'm just going to quickly dwell on some of the price pressures on Bitcoin. Ultimately, this is a story of supply, of people waiting finally for creditors to be repaid in some way, and then maybe they sell out. But Mt. Gox always seems to overhang the market. Would it be a long-term overhang?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, as you mentioned, we have roughly 142,000 Bitcoin, 143,000 Bitcoin Cash, and roughly 69 billion yen that's due to creditors. That being said, we've seen historically in the past where there is custodial movement for different wallet preparations due for distribution, although both the company and the former CEO have said that that's going to likely be much closer to October 31st of 2024 this year. And so, you know, I think a lot of this is very much narrative sell pressure as opposed to actual distributions that were expected to happen.
Let's go to the narrative of ETH, therefore, because is it me or did everyone get upended by this? There is so much debate as to why suddenly the SEC seems to have, against its own self and own desires, be allowing there to be an ETH ETF coming sometime soon. We know that issuers have still got to get some sort of go-ahead. But Aya, what's your view on why this has happened?
Yeah, I mean, to your point around, you know, everyone being relatively surprised and underexposed, you could even see it in Polymarket, so a prediction marketplace, which earlier last week showed roughly 5% probability for the ETH ETF approval. And that was then immediately repriced to roughly 70%. And then, of course, the approval announcement. And so I think what has been more surprising for everyone to see in the space is that we're continuing to see crypto becoming a center topic for the 2024 presidential election. We obviously had the FIT 21, the financial institutional technology bill, also get passed in Congress as well. And so that's been a full focus this year. And so we're going to continue to see that as we near the debate in June of this year as well.
Were you taken by surprise, Aya?
I certainly was. It's a good question. I would say again, not only, I myself am very bullish ETH and the entire ETH ecosystem, but we did see a number of our clients underexposed to ETH, and there was a large rotation into both ETH BTC, ETH Solana rotation. There's a lot of anticipation right now around Solana ETF being next on the list, and you really saw also the ETH ecosystem tokens outperform. So you saw Lido, for example, that was up roughly 40%. And in options, a lot of activity. That said, implied volatility is still down, and we're seeing muted activity since the announcement. And a lot of that is because, Caroline, as you mentioned at the beginning, there's still questions around what the timeline is for the listing of the ETF itself. We've heard anything between the next week through end of summer. And so there's a lot of expectations right now over what that timeline will be, since as well the issuers themselves were caught off guard as too.
All right, I'm trying to get to the root of what the bigger picture is here. We talk about Ethereum being the most commercially used blockchain. Kavita Gupta was on the show with me on Friday saying that, well, if Bitcoin is digital gold, ETH or Ether is digital oil. What's your kind of bigger picture on why this is important?
ETH is truly one of the foundational pieces of the entire ecosystem. Today, if you look at where most of the activity is centered, it is centered around Ethereum and its layer 2s. And without question, it's one of the most active chains in the space. And so even though you've seen alternative chains come about, Ethereum is still very much the main chain where most of the activity in the space is happening and where a lot of the total value locked still stays to this date. Even if you look at some of the upcoming token launches, those projects are very ETH specific and dependent. And so, I think the question here is that ETH is a core foundational token for the industry, and having that be accepted as an ETF is really the main narrative for us being able to bring crypto mainstream.
That and a presidential election in the United States. Who'd have thought it? We thank you, Aya Kantorovich, August, co-CEO, co-founder. And what have we got coming up?
Elon Musk's XAI raising $6 billion. We're going to get all the details from our team coming up next. I'm also looking at GameStop. So GameStop, it continues. The shares up 23%. 45 million shares were sold Friday. The company raised almost $1 billion trying to basically capitalize on, jump on the meme stock frenzy and trading activity of late. So two big factors there, and it just never ends. The meme stock frenzy seems to be back, but in this case, there is a mechanical reason as well. From SF in New York, this is Bloomberg Technology. Welcome back to Bloomberg Technology. Ed Ludlow in San Francisco.
Caroline Hyde right here in New York. Let's get you a check on these markets because we're managing to power through what had been a little bit of concern as we head towards an all-important week from economic data perspective. PCE number, that favoured inflationary data for the Federal Reserve. And indeed, we still got some strong data that's been happening throughout the day. We've got sentiment looking pretty good, housing data strong. What does that mean for the Fed? We're looking at managing a NASDAQ 100 to the higher side of 0.3%. But on the downside, we are seeing Europe close lower, Ed, and we're off by just 0.6%. Remember, we maybe have a slightly thinner liquidity this week all round as we've had holiday shortened weeks, both in the UK and indeed here in the US. I'm looking at Bitcoin under pressure as we think about potentially Mt. Gox similar movements within the wallets of that previous big Bitcoin exchange that went under all the way back in 2014. Still $9 billion worth of Bitcoin locked up. Will we start to see that move? Will it still start to be sold? Let's move on to have a look at what's happening on individual movers. What's the micro data telling us on a company like mRNA, Moderna, down because the run-up that we saw last week, we had a record run, 10 days back-to-back of gains for this particular stock. We're just taking some profits, perhaps for Moderna at the moment. I'm looking at what's happening, though, for the likes of Texas Instruments. We talked about it. This is all about an activist investor taking $2.5 billion stake. This coming, of course, from Elliott. What do they want? More cash, please, coming from Texas Instruments. But also keep an eye on other chip makers. NVIDIA leading the chart. Maybe this is why we managed to see tech stocks do well in the face of some anxiety around data and the macro. We're up 5% on NVIDIA, and that's all around the key story of Elon Musk raising money for XAI, Ed, and what that means for key chip makers.
Yeah, this is a story that we've covered step by step for a number of months now. Elon Musk's artificial intelligence startup xAI has raised $6 billion in a bid to challenge his former allies over at OpenAI. It comes less than a year after xAI's debut and marks one of the bigger investments in the field. Joining us now is Bloomberg's Kurt Wagner. We know the numbers. They published them in a blog. But I guess a good place to start is that he also managed to attract some very big name investors, those that you kind of want behind you.
Yeah, that's right. Valor Equity, Andreessen Horowitz, Sequoia Capital. You may realize or recognize that a lot of these names are also folks who invested in X, or what was Twitter when Elon took over. And so he's kind of tapped into a similar or familiar pool of investors. As you mentioned, raised $6 billion. I believe the pre-money valuation was $18 billion. So when you tack on the 6, we're now looking at a valuation around $24 billion. And what's still a little confusing is, whether these xAI investors who are also invested in X, what the terms or what the structure of that arrangement looks like. But you do see him going back to a very familiar pool of investors here.
What's interesting is Tesla has been under pressure, and there's always that ongoing anxiety as to where Elon's focus really lies here at the moment. How much are we seeing this as, well, he's frustrated by a lack of ownership of Tesla now and shareholder ownership, and what he now wants to create when it comes to a supercomputer to power Grok AI?
Yeah. Well, I think the big difference here is that, investors in particular are just incredibly excited about AI, more so than I think they probably were about Twitter. And so, you look at Twitter and you see him spending all this time there and think like, what's the business upside? And it's not very promising. But when you look at an AI company, the returns are much more exciting, or at least you could imagine much more exciting. So if he's going to be distracted, I would imagine investors are more comfortable with him being distracted with xAI than they are with X right now, just simply from a business standpoint.
Elon Musk has been saying a lot on X, but I think it's worth just spending a moment, Kurt, and reminding the audience the relationship between X, the social media platform and company, and xAI, and how they work between the two of them.
Yeah, so xAI's main product and really only product right now is a chatbot called Grok. And it is trained using data from X. And so, all the conversation that's happening on X is being used to train this chatbot. And Elon has talked about the importance of making Grok very real time, and how X is a differentiator there, right? Because it's a platform that's full of news and commentary around current events, and how that plays into Grok. So that's the relationship right now, right here. Total speculation, but I don't think it's crazy to think of X as kind of becoming a more formal part of xAI in the future. It would certainly take a little pressure off of the company. It would tie it to, again, this AI business model that I think people are very excited about. Certainly investors are excited about. But right now, X data training xAI, which is the Grok output, and we see that product being integrated into X right now as well.
And to be as truth-seeking as possible. Kurt Wagner, we thank you so much for breaking it down. And of course, that was what was being talked about by Elon Musk last week at the Viva Tech conference, and some of his frustration with OpenAI, which of course, remember, back in the day, he did help co-create and then left. Let's talk about OpenAI right now, because it has created a board committee to evaluate the safety and security of its AI models. It's a governance change, basically, made weeks after top executive on the subject resigned, along with some deputies. And the company basically disbanded this internal team. I'm going to break it all down with Bloomberg's Rachel Metz. And that they're trying to make an effort here to show they are caring about safety, about alignment with humanity. But who's on this board, and should we therefore take them at face value?
Yeah, that was one of the first things I noticed, actually, is that they said in a blog post that Sam Altman is one of the leaders of this board, as well as a couple of the board members, existing board members, and a handful of current employees. And then it sounds like they're going to include consultation with outside people, and they named 2 of them. I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to watch and see how these people all work together, and then like what kind of recommendations they actually come up with. We know that Ilya Sutskever, who had been the company's chief scientist and was involved in the ousting, the very brief ousting of Sam Altman, disagreed with Altman about safety-related issues. Ilya is gone now, as is his chief deputy, and so things are changing. It is important to say, though, that the company has long had lots of safety people working on safety across the company. So it's not like there weren't already people working on safety of models there. This is an additional layer.
The timing is interesting. The two former board members of OpenAI penned an op-ed in The Economist over the weekend, basically saying that they are worried, continue to be worried about governance of OpenAI. You know, it's difficult, Rachel, but does this new format or oversight board answer some of their concerns?
I'm not sure that it does. I would guess that they would say not really, because this is created with a lot of people that are already at OpenAI. One thing that also stood out to me is there doesn't look to be a lot of diversity in this group, especially in terms of gender diversity. So that just on the surface, I feel like that's like a pretty obvious thing that is missing from there. But also, if you have a lot of people that are already involved in the company, involved in this kind of group, it's hard for me to see how you would get that much outside input that would then be taken seriously.
And Rachel, I'm so glad you bring that up, because then, of course, last week we saw that Meta has an AI oversight board. Guess what that is? 4 white guys.
Yeah, Bloomberg's Rachel Metz. I think, you know, the issue of the people behind the models, the actual human oversight is super important, and we're really grateful to you and the team on the AI team for all of the coverage. Bloomberg's Rachel Metz, thank you. A lot more to come here on Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, we're going to be joined by Framework Ventures co-founder Vance Spencer, and we're going to go back to that conversation about crypto and in particular the idea of spot ETH ETF. Stick with us. We'll be right back. This is Bloomberg Technology.
Riot Platforms, of course we're talking crypto mining here, has made an unsolicited $950 million offer to buy a rival, Bitfarms, after the smaller Bitcoin miner actually rebuffed its takeover approach last month. Let's get to it. Bloomberg's Matthew Monks. They've been building up a stake, and now they want to buy sort of against their own desires, it seems.
Yeah, so this is really exciting. We have a hostile takeover situation in the Bitcoin space, or Bitcoin mining space. This is a classic old-school bear hug maneuver. They took a 9.25% stake in the target. They're going public with the offer, and they're effectively launching a proxy fight against the board to put some new board members onto it.
Yeah.
So, you know, Bitcoin is a whole newfangled thing, but this is like old-school classic M&A.
And they're not liking the governance, for example, of Bitfarms after they've had some changing within corporate leadership. But I'm interested, Matthew, like, what does this tell us about consolidation in the newer space of crypto?
Well, listen, big fish eats little fish. The Bitcoin mining space right now is under enormous pressure following the halving, as which we all know, which really cut down the Bitcoin rewards and really cut into the revenue of these companies. Riot is in much better, stronger financial shape. It's got like 8,900 Bitcoin, $700 million in cash, and as you know, as you noted, the target has got some CEO corporate governance challenges, so it's ripe for the taking.
Really fascinating what we're going to be seeing in the crypto space, particularly as everyone worries about energy going forward too. Matthew Monks in the house, we appreciate you taking us through the old school and the new school, and you're going to be focusing a little bit more on the newer school of it.
Yeah, a dive deeper into the world of crypto, this time from the investor's perspective with Framework Ventures co-founder Vance Spencer, who joins us in today's VC Spotlight. And, you know, Vance, where we start is by asking if you, as an individual, were taken by surprise at the pace of conversation around a spot ETH ETF.
Absolutely not. We were one of the few firms that predicted, I think on this show, that it was going to happen. And we've still got a couple of months until it starts trading, so people have time to get into position, but ETH is the clear asset that should have the second ETF. It has the most stable coins, it has higher fee base than Bitcoin, it has a dividend, it's deflationary. This is an asset that people want to own. And so I know the bears were prognosticating for quite some time about how the odds were 10%, or now I think the line is that the ETH inflows will be lower than expected. but we'd happily fade that as well. And we're firmly in the camp that ETH is going to be a huge beneficiary from these flows.
Vance, you said a couple of months. What leads you to believe trading will start in a couple of months, and what you think the regulatory roadmap is from here?
Yeah, so the 19B4s, which is the first part of the process, have been approved. And that was kind of the crux of the political pivot that happened last week. Now you have to get the S1s approved. And, there's a lot of complexity in the S1s in and of themselves, but we view this delay as positive. You're going to have that same natural buildup that Bitcoin had once it looked like it was going to get approved. You're going to have additional sales and marketing that's going to happen. And I think the bigger thing is that to some extent, ETH is going to ride the coattails of all the access that Bitcoin has created, the access into the RIAs, the financial advisors, the wirehouses. And so, you think about someone wants to put $1 into crypto, what do? When people think about the Magnificent Seven, they don't go all in on one of them. Maybe they do a peanut butter spread, maybe they go overweight one or the other, but both or all 7 of those are components of a smart investing strategy. We think the same thing is going to happen here.
I don't really know where to go with the peanut butter jelly analogy. If you're talking about NVIDIA, you probably got a pretty thick peanut butter layer and a very small little jam layer, chunky. That's one way of putting it. I always do my best to be consistent and ask the same question consistently when something like this happens, and that is, what are the principal differences in Bitcoin spot ETF, Ether spot ETF? But I guess what we're actually asking is the principal difference between an Ethereum-based blockchain and Bitcoin blockchain.
So Bitcoin's digital gold, right? And you can view the rigidness of its roadmap. There is no future roadmap for Bitcoin being either a feature of a bug or a bug in the sense that Bitcoin is going to be Bitcoin for the next 100 years. ETH is at the forefront of the tokenization movement that is going to really define the next few decades of traditional finance. We're going to start with the stablecoins, the $100 billion of stablecoins that are on chain today. But now BlackRock's bringing on fixed income. People bringing on equities. People are bringing on commodities. People are bringing on private credit. And so ETH is at the forefront of that movement, and it's also just a very different asset. It does about $2 to $3 billion of profits per year. It dividends those out. The asset itself is deflationary. It's proof of stake. It's a very different asset than Bitcoin. I would say it's more of a tech-style growth play. And if Bitcoin is digital gold, ETH is Apple. It's building the App Store of finance. And just like people thought that, the App Store was a toy or a gimmick, 10 years ago, people are going to be really surprised at the uniqueness of the fees and just the scale of the business that ETH is going to generate from the tokenization wave that's taking place. And it's Larry Fink, it's Paul Tudor Jones, it's all these guys. They're all on this train.
Okay, so the Vance Spencer call is that ETH is Apple. Kavita Gupta was on the show on Friday and said it's digital oil. If Bitcoin is digital gold, Ether is digital oil. I'd love to talk to you about kind of the ripple or secondary effects of what might happen if the approvals come as expected. We talk often in our Bloomberg News coverage on this program, the Ethereum blockchain is the most commercially used globally. There is a DeFi component to all of this. What is the sort of crystal ball into the future if the approvals happen in the cadence at which you've set out?
Yeah, so I think we take pride in we manage just around $1.8 billion today. We're a venture firm at our core, but we play in the liquid markets as well. And we're one of the few firms that's bought 9 figures of crypto pretty consistently on open market exchanges over time. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that moves the price pretty meaningfully. And ETH is a much smaller asset than Bitcoin. It's a much more reflexive asset. There's much less of it available. If you have, even pro rata the share of flows to Bitcoin by market cap, that is going to make a significant impact in the market structure and flows of crypto writ large. And so you can think about it back to 2020. 2020, Michael Saylor was on the scene. We were buying digital gold. That was going to be the only asset that we were going to buy in that bull run. And sure enough, ETH Bitcoin, the ratio between the two went up 3x in the span of 3 months. And I think with this catalyst, with the setup of the relative lack of supply and just the narrative that, these are not just, pet rocks that sit around and we call stores of value, but they're things that we actually build with as technology, that's going to be a huge tailwind for ETH. And so it's hard to overstate just how positive we are. And this is kind of a surprising decision for a lot of people, the ETF, but this has always been baked into the cake for us.
Vance, you used the word political earlier in this conversation. It's an election year. We have a presidential election in this country where at least one of the candidates has tried to make crypto a battleground topic. Does this approval process for spot ETH ETF have any relevance to that?
Absolutely. There's 60 million of us in the US that hold crypto. There's hundreds of millions, if not a billion globally, that hold crypto. You know, in a lot of these emerging markets as well, there's more wallets on crypto accounts than there are bank accounts. Like, this industry is not going anywhere. And I think it's, the Democrats that have finally gotten the memo on this. And it's amazing to see, the party that I call home finally pivot on this decision. And FIT21, which is the regulatory clarity bill, provides a pathway for stablecoin issuers, application developers, people who want to tokenize assets to stay in the US. And that is so important. Tether, which I think is the 30th largest buyer of US Treasuries, is overseas. That is absolutely embarrassing, and we want those industries in the US. And so, we should be rooting for any growth industry with entrepreneurs and real technology to stay here. And I think that's finally what's happening politically.
Framework Ventures co-founder Vance Spencer, come back, talk to us later in the year, and let's see if the approvals came to your timeline. Thank you. Caroline.
Yeah, coming up. Look, we had a bit of a disappointing Memorial Day weekend when it comes to the box office, at least. We'll bring you the details next. This is Bloomberg Technology. Now, perhaps while you were celebrating, you weren't doing it at the box office. A disappointing Memorial Day weekend for the movies. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, took in just $32 million domestically, while the Garfield movie came in close second, $31.1 million, according to data from Comscore. Now, the Furiosa results, likely the worst performance for a #1 film released on Memorial Day weekend in decades. This all comes as the industry bounces back from strikes, remember, writers, actors last year, and a consumer shift to watching films at home. Now, Bloomberg Intelligence actually notes that, look, 2025 is going to be a much better film industry. That's when perhaps some of the strikes uncrystallize themselves. But, Ed, we're having to depend on less marketing as well, budget tightening. It's all about word of mouth, and it's not really working.
I find Furiosa so interesting because I saw it everywhere on social media. Chris Hemsworth doing all the media events around the world, but I didn't go and see it. And for me, it goes back to the idea of theatrical release at the box office or a streaming release. This weekend, I wasn't in the movie theater. I was at home watching Atlas on Netflix, which is the new Jennifer Lopez movie about her trying to take down humanoid AI that's gone rogue. So that's interesting on the strategy side.
Was that any good?
It actually was pretty good, and Jennifer Lopez was pretty good in it. But one of the things that Chris Palmieri, our editor, notes in his column about the box office this weekend is they were unfortunate because there's some good stuff that's coming in the summer, and as you note, 2025 is a much bigger kind of pipeline.
But just think about the hype around Oppenheimer and Barbie in the previous year. No wonder you're going to see perhaps year-on-year comparisons being tough. I mean, the actual fact that we came in well below the worst-case scenarios being thought out here. It was, 37% down from this time last year's holiday weekend at the box office. People are not wanting to spend in that way right now. And certainly, even though it's a rainy Monday, I wasn't thinking about going and hitting the cinemas at the moment. I'm more thinking about, how to do it at home.
One quick thing. Garfield from my childhood, our childhood, right? Why remake another Garfield? Just come up with a new movie, please, at some point.
Well, if it's going to be Frozen Take 4 or something like that, sometimes these franchises, they work out, Ed. Meanwhile, look, that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology.
It was a really busy start to a shortened week, so check out the podcast. You know where to find it, Apple, Spotify, iHeart. And as Karen noted, this is a really big week for economic data and markets. There's some earnings thrown in there as well. Yeah. But we started talking about AI and crypto, and I probably suspect that's how we'll carry on. From New York City and San Francisco, this is Bloomberg Technology.